If you want to understand society, you need to look beyond just the United States, because increasingly we're living in a global world. The shoes you wear, if you check the label on them, almost guarantee you they are not made in the United States. If you've ever eaten sushi or Italian food, if you've ever watched the BBC, you know that we live in a world of international connections. So this is our globe as seen from space. And just to give you an idea of kind of what our world looks like physically and where people live, this is a pretty accurate depiction of our globe flattened out. This huge chunk of land here, this is Asia. And Europe is actually part of Asia. It's just one little peninsula sticking off to the side here. But Asia is the largest continent. It also has more people than any other continent. Not only does it have more people, if you look right here, this is continents by land area, and right next to that is people. This is 4 billion people all living within Asia. That's more than anywhere else in the world. And that's more than all of the rest of the world combined. The next largest continent is Africa. And Africa is a continent made up of many different countries, many different cultures, many different people, many different conditions. And it's the next largest in terms of population as well. Asia and Africa also have the highest level of population growth at this time. The United States is part of North America, and that's the third largest continent. But in terms of people, we're relatively a small chunk of the world. So, globalization is the process of increasing connections between different parts of the world. And we've had movement of people and goods and ideas across the world for as long as there have been humans, basically. International trade has been going on for a very long time. The Silk Road moved goods from China and back to China between various parts of Asia and even into Europe and Africa 2,000 years ago. But how were they doing it? You think back, the earliest humans were moving entirely by foot. Everything that they were bringing from place to place, they carried in their minds or in their hands, and maybe on their backs. Gradually, as people domesticated animals, they had camels to help them move a few more goods from place to place. People invented the wheel. They were able to move things a little bit faster, it was a little bit easier, but still a very slow movement. If you wanted to go from China to Italy, it was going to take you weeks or months of long, hard, dangerous travel. And that meant anything, any material good you wanted to transfer, any idea, any piece of news was going to take that long to get from place to place, weeks or months. With each new innovation in technology, there have been increasing connections, increasing speed of connection between different parts of the world. And I included Chinese gunpowder, which is the basis of all cannons and guns that we now use, also changed the way that people interacted and the speed of interaction, because it allowed people to conquer one another more easily. You can shoot someone from a distance, so even interacting with someone in terms of violence became quicker and easier. With the advent of Arabic sails and their movement into Europe, people were able to travel by sea more easily, and so Europe gradually came to connect with North and South America, where there was already many people living, and so suddenly the two sides of the world were connected. With industrialization, people were no longer reliant on their feet or on animal feet and muscle. They were no longer reliant on the wind to move ships from place to place. Suddenly, we could use coal or oil power to move from place to place faster and faster. Even during the time of Columbus, to travel between North or South America and Europe still took months. Now you can do it in a plane in a matter of hours. Increasingly, we are connected. Our economies are global. You go to the store in the United States that someone in another part of the world maybe came up with, in a different part of the world grew the cotton to, say, make your shirt. That cotton was sent to a whole different continent to be stitched into a shirt, and then possibly shipped to another continent to be printed, and then shipped to you to be sold in a store. Our governments are intertwined. The U.S. government has its own occupied territories in various parts of the world. We have military forces in many different countries in many different places in the world. And in the United States, our population is increasing only because of immigration. Our population, in terms of babies that people here are having, is actually stabilized. But it's people coming into this country that are increasing. And that's the case in much of Europe as well. People are moving more than they ever have before from place to place, from country to country, from continent to continent. The Industrial Revolution started in Europe and has spread throughout the world. And we see that when you look down at Earth at night from a satellite, you can see what parts of the world are industrialized by how much is lit up. More and more of the world is getting lit up because they're modernizing. Modernization theory is the functionalist theory that the structure of the global economy and globalization generally is helping more and more countries become modern. They're becoming more industrial. They're raising their living standards. They're lighting up. Multinational corporations are companies that exist in many different countries. They trade within different countries. They have different parts of their production happening in different countries. And the theory here is that they help poor countries modernize. They help them improve their own economies by investing money to create factories, importing technology to make things, and training people so that they have a workforce to do what they need to do. Poor countries, because their economy at this point is lower, that means cost of living is lower, and these corporations can pay less to get the job done, get the same work done for less money while providing money to people to live in these countries. Wealthy countries help poor countries by offering loans to help them bring in new corporations. They to improve their education systems to make them more attractive to companies that need an educated workforce. Wealthy countries provide technical and political guidance to keep their political systems stable and their economies growing. Modernization is more than just material. Modernization changes culture. And so as poor countries modernize, they move away from traditional ways of life. They generally become more educated, more individualistic. That means more competition within the global economic capitalist system. Modernization generally means an increasing amount of democracy, moving towards the kind of systems that we have in this country. And it often also leads to lower rates of fertility, which is good. It stabilizes the population. And it means lower rates of war as people have more to live for and an easier time acquiring what they need to survive. It's a gradual transition. Is modernization working? Is it improving lives? This is a chart of poverty rates, and you can see that just few decades ago, in 1990, in Africa and Asia, which is where the vast majority of the world's population lives, over half of the world were living in conditions that we would call poverty. Now, in 2015, projected, less than half, in even where there's been the least decrease, We've gone from more than half the population to less than half the population. And in some places it's gone down hugely from over half the population in East Asia to less than 10% of the population living in conditions of significant poverty. Going back for a moment to gender caste issues, modernization can help women in poor parts of the world because they tend to be the ones who suffer the most. Girls in developing countries are generally considered less valuable, where there's not enough material, not enough food, not enough education to go around. It's generally men who are given what little there is. And so women suffer. They suffer from violence as well. They suffer from a lack of political rights. Modernization means moving towards democratic systems in which everyone is empowered, including women. And when women get empowered, they contribute back to modernization. Empowered women generally work harder. There's far more people to participate in the economy. They generally have less children, which means there's less mouths to feed. More money is able to go into improving the lives of the children that they do have.